Elias Vance had been working beneath the royal palace of Varian long enough to know that alien architecture followed two sacred principles. Every hallway had to look capable of hosting an emperor's funeral, and every maintenance panel had to be hidden somewhere no sane engineer would ever search. He was lying on his back beneath a floating conduit bridge when the first alarm sounded. The deep metallic pulse rolled through the foundations, followed by a second tone that made every luminous circuit line along the ceiling flash from white to crimson. Elias stopped tightening the plasma regulator and stared upward. "That," he murmured, "is definitely not the machine politely asking for a break." His wrist console filled with warnings: power instability, atmospheric control failure, restricted sector breach. 3 messages overlapped until the screen looked as confused as he felt. The main palace AI attempted to speak, managed half a sentence, then replaced its own voice with an unpleasant electronic buzz. Elias slid out from beneath the conduit, grabbed his tool case, and hurried into the corridor. Above him, somewhere beyond hundreds of meters of crystal alloy and royal decoration, diplomats from 7 star systems were preparing for the summit beginning the next morning. Down here, ancient reactors hummed inside walls constructed before humans had invented electricity. Elias had always found that comforting in a strange way. Politicians could argue about borders while engineers quietly prevented civilization from exploding underneath them. Tonight, civilization seemed unusually determined to explode. His diagnostic scanner traced the power anomaly toward the eastern substructure, but the route displayed on his map ended abruptly against a blank section marked "Access Denied." Elias frowned. Helpful? He followed the energy readings instead, descending a narrow gravitic staircase into a wing he had never seen during 11 months of palace service. The walls changed as he went. Decorative silver vanished, replaced by seamless black material that absorbed the light from his shoulder lamp. Doors appeared without handles. Thin symbols glowed briefly as he passed, recognizing his presence but refusing to translate themselves. The temperature climbed several degrees. Then the corridor trembled. A pressure wave struck hard enough to throw Elias against the wall. Somewhere ahead, machinery screamed. A door at the end of the passage suddenly opened. Elias stared at it. His console displayed a message: "Emergency engineering access authorized." "Of course," he said. "The mysterious forbidden door likes me now." He stepped through. The door sealed immediately behind him. The chamber beyond was enormous, circular, and filled with machinery unlike anything in the normal palace systems. Transparent tubes climbed toward a domed ceiling. Medical holograms floated above consoles, displaying complex alien genetic structures. Atmospheric regulators pulsed along the walls. At the center stood a raised platform surrounded by shimmering fields of cool mist. Elias took 3 steps before realizing he was not alone. A woman stood near the platform, one hand gripping its edge. She looked almost human at first glance, tall, graceful, pale-skinned, with long silver-blonde hair falling across her shoulders, but her elegant pointed ears extended noticeably beyond her hair. Her breathing was uneven. A thin sheen of perspiration covered her forehead, and her eyes reflected the chamber lights with unusual intensity. Elias recognized her immediately. Every citizen on Varian would have. Queen Seralyth turned toward him slowly. For several seconds neither spoke. Then her expression changed from shock to absolute royal fury. "How?" she said, voice low and dangerously controlled. "Did you enter this chamber?" Elias glanced back at the sealed door. "Accidentally?" Her long ears angled backward. Elias had learned enough about her species to understand that was not encouraging. "Leave." Excellent suggestion. He touched the door panel. Nothing happened. He tried again. The panel flashed red. "Lockdown active." "Slight problem." Seralyth stepped toward him, then stopped suddenly as if the movement had caused pain. Her fingers tightened around the platform railing. Elias noticed the medical displays now. Elevated temperature, rapid metabolic activity, hormonal indicators far outside normal parameters. He immediately looked away from the biological details. Palace rumors occasionally mentioned that Seralyth species experienced periodic cycles requiring medical isolation, but sensible employees treated royal biology the way they treated reactor cores, from a respectful distance, and preferably behind reinforced walls. "You should not be here," she said. "I'm becoming increasingly aware of that." Another alarm sounded. This one came from the atmospheric regulators. Elias instinctively turned toward the nearest console. Oxygen balance was falling. Thermal stabilization was dropping even faster. He opened his tool case. Seralyth's gaze sharpened. "What are you doing?" "Trying to make sure neither of us becomes historically embarrassing." "Do not touch anything." "Your Majesty, I respect royal authority deeply, but the oxygen generator appears less politically cooperative." Elias removed the access cover and froze. 3 control filaments had been cut cleanly. Not burned, not overloaded. Cut. He examined the connections, then moved to the secondary atmospheric module. The same damage. Someone had opened the sealed housing and manually disabled the redundant systems. Elias's humor disappeared. He pulled his scanner free and checked the life support network. False readings were being transmitted into the palace monitoring system. Outside this chamber, every diagnostic would show normal operation. Inside, the temperature continued rising. Seralyth watched his face. "What is it?" Elias stood slowly. "This wasn't a power failure." "Explain." He pointed toward the severed filaments. "Redundant life support doesn't accidentally cut itself in exactly 3 places, and your external monitors are being fed fabricated data." Seralyth's expression became still, dangerously still. Elias looked around the secret chamber again, the medical equipment, the sealed door, the hidden biological systems, and understood the significance before he wanted to. Whoever had done this knew exactly where the Queen would be tonight. He met her eyes. "Your Majesty, either your palace has developed a remarkable talent for suicide." Another warning flashed across the console. "Atmospheric failure, 12%. Elias picked up his tools. "Or somebody planned to kill you in this room." Seralyth did not answer immediately. The Queen stood perfectly still while the red warning lights swept across the chamber again and again, painting the medical consoles in pulses that made the room feel less like a sanctuary and more like the inside of a dying starship. Elias had seen officers freeze under pressure before, but this was different. Seralyth was not frozen. She was calculating. Even with fever brightening her eyes and forcing her breathing faster than normal, her attention moved from the severed filaments to the sealed door, then to Elias. "You knew which systems to inspect first," she said. Elias crouched beside the damaged atmospheric unit. That is generally considered a useful quality in an engineer. "Or in a saboteur." He looked over his shoulder. Also true. Saboteurs and engineers share an unfortunate amount of professional vocabulary. Her expression remained hard. Elias could not blame her. He had entered a chamber that practically did not exist during the most biologically vulnerable period of her species, and within minutes announced that someone was trying to murder her. From her perspective, he was either very unlucky or remarkably convenient. Seralyth moved toward a nearby console, but the heat caught up with her. Her hand tightened against its edge. The medical hologram reacted immediately, projecting a warning about rising metabolic stress. Elias deliberately kept his eyes on the environmental readings instead. "You need the stabilizing atmosphere restored." "I know what I need." "Good. Saves me explaining the medical part I'm desperately pretending not to understand." For the first time, a trace of something almost like amusement moved through her expression, but it vanished quickly. "Your humor is inappropriate." "Yes, it's one of humanity's more successful emergency systems." He opened the secondary regulator and found another deliberate modification. Someone had not simply cut power. A molecular cartridge responsible for adding a trace stabilizing compound to the atmosphere had been removed entirely. Elias scanned the empty housing, then the surrounding controls. This is worse. Seralyth stepped closer. How? The oxygen failure could kill anyone trapped here. This, he pointed to the missing cartridge. This was designed for you specifically. Her long ears angled back slightly. Elias had learned that movement meant anger rather than embarrassment. The compound is called Vaelor, she said. During my cycle it regulates neural excitation and prevents metabolic escalation. Elias nodded toward the display, and somebody removed it while programming the external diagnostics to pretend it's still flowing. Silence settled between them. Behind the walls, pumps slowed another fraction. Seralyth's gaze changed. The suspicion toward Elias remained, but something colder joined it. Recognition. Very few people know when I enter isolation. How few? Enough that I can name them. Elias shut the panel. That's usually good news. You believe so? No, but I was trying optimism. I dislike it already. The chamber emitted a harsh tone. Temperature stabilization had failed completely. Elias checked his scanner. Internal temperature, 31 degrees Celsius and rising. For Seralyth species, already running dangerously hot during the cycle, that could become lethal quickly. He crossed to a maintenance storage cabinet and forced it open. Inside were sterile medical tools, replacement seals, 2 emergency respirators, and a small spherical service drone that immediately awakened and projected a cheerful blue face. Greetings! How may I assist Royal Medical Staff? Elias picked it up. By surviving surgery. The drone's face changed to concern. I am not certified for surgery. Neither am I. Seralyth stared at him. What exactly are you planning? The cooling loop still works. The atmospheric distributor does not. If I route coolant through this drone's circulation pump, I can build a temporary heat exchanger. You intend to dismantle royal medical equipment? Your Majesty, at the moment everything in this room is either royal, medical, or trying to kill us. My options are limited. He removed the drone's casing. The machine protested politely while he disconnected its mobility core and linked the pump to a length of transparent tubing. Seralyth watched him work, occasionally closing her eyes as another wave of biological discomfort passed through her. Elias pretended not to notice. He had no intention of turning her vulnerability into humiliation. She was his monarch, but more importantly, she was a person trapped in a failing room. 10 minutes later, his improvised system began circulating chilled fluid through the wall exchanger. Cool air spilled into the chamber. Seralyth inhaled slowly, and some tension left her shoulders. It works, she said. Elias wiped his hands on his jacket. Never sound surprised when speaking to an engineer. It encourages dangerous confidence. A sudden flicker moved across his scanner. He frowned. Something microscopic was active inside the control network. He increased resolution until a cluster of moving particles appeared. Not dust. Programmable nanites. Thousands of them were crawling through the circuitry, altering sensor data in real time. Elias felt the chill before the cooling system could take credit for it. Found our invisible accomplices. Seralyth leaned closer. Nanomachines? Military grade or better. He magnified the code signature. They're rewriting diagnostics and degrading hardware slowly enough to resemble component failure. Her eyes narrowed. Can you trace them? Eventually. We may not have eventually. As if agreeing, the outer door gave a heavy mechanical thud. Elias turned. Another followed. Someone was attempting to override the biological lock from outside. Seralyth straightened despite the strain in her body. Royal security. Elias looked at his scanner. The chamber network still showed no emergency transmitted beyond the room. Whoever was outside had arrived without receiving an alarm. He moved toward the door, then stopped. Maybe. Seralyth's gaze sharpened. You doubt it? Elias watched the lock cycle through an unauthorized command sequence. I doubt anyone who knows this door exists and arrives exactly after life support starts failing deserves immediate trust. The next impact shook the chamber. Seralyth looked toward the sealed entrance, then back at him. For the first time since he had entered, she no longer looked at Elias as the greatest threat in the room. "Engineer," she said quietly, "keep that door closed." Elias reached the door console just as another impact rolled through the chamber. The biological lock pulsed red beneath his hand, then briefly flashed white as an external command attempted to seize control. Whoever stood on the other side was not simply forcing the entrance. They were speaking to the security system in its own language. He connected his wrist console to the access port and watched encrypted authorization strings race across the display. "That's impressive," he muttered. Seralyth stood several meters behind him, one hand braced against the edge of the medical platform. "You sound admiring." "Professional jealousy. Whoever is trying to murder us has excellent network access." "That is not reassuring." "I wasn't aiming for reassuring." Another command struck the lock. Elias redirected it into a diagnostic loop, buying perhaps a few minutes. "The chamber is accepting their credentials as legitimate, but refusing entry because your biological isolation protocol outranks them. For once, royal bureaucracy is saving lives." Seralyth's mouth tightened. "I shall commission a statue to paperwork." "Make it heroic, maybe holding a stamp." The temperature had begun falling thanks to his improvised cooling system, but the medical displays still showed her metabolism climbing. The missing Vaelor was becoming increasingly important. Seralyth's long ears twitched at every mechanical sound, and Elias realized her heightened senses were worsening. The hum of the pumps that barely registered to him must have sounded like engines inside her skull. He lowered the chamber lights and silenced every non-essential alarm he could reach. "What are you doing?" "Reducing sensory load." She looked at him sharply. "You have studied my species?" "No, I've studied people having terrible days." That answer seemed to disarm her more effectively than any technical explanation. Elias returned to the nanite scan. The microscopic machines were moving through 3 separate control trunks, not randomly, but according to a coordinated pattern. He isolated one cluster inside a damaged atmospheric relay and trapped it behind a magnetic containment field. The enlarged hologram showed tiny geometric machines folding and unfolding like metallic insects. "These aren't maintenance nanites," he said. "Too adaptive." "Military?" "Possibly intelligence grade. They're not just corrupting data, they're imitating normal system decay." Seralyth moved closer, slower now. "Could someone have inserted them remotely?" Elias shook his head. "Not into an isolated network this deep. Somebody had physical access." The Queen stared at the moving hologram. 5 people knew the exact timing of my isolation." Elias glanced at her. "You said you could name them." "Physician Mareth, Commander Kaelor, my chief attendant Isara, Chancellor Demev, and my cousin Vaelor." "Small suspect list." "You forgot yourself." Elias looked offended. "I've known about this room for roughly 40 minutes. I feel that should count in my favor." "It does not. Royal courts are brutal." The outer door shook again. Elias checked the override progress. 7 minutes, perhaps less. He moved to the chamber's central console and forced open the emergency communication panel. Every normal channel showed green. No warnings, no breach, no life support failure. According to the Palace network, Queen Seralyth was resting comfortably in a perfectly functional room. Elias stared at the false telemetry. They built a mirror system. Meaning? The Palace isn't receiving real data from this chamber anymore. It's receiving a simulation. Seralyth's expression darkened. "Then no one knows I am in danger." "Correct. And whoever is outside does." "Also correct." She exhaled slowly. "Your talent for making situations sound worse is remarkable." "Thank you."
That was not praise. Elias began searching for any circuit untouched by the counterfeit telemetry. Deep beneath the modern network, he found an ancient optical line running independently through the chamber foundation. The protocol was obsolete, possibly centuries old. "I've got something." He connected a converter and received a burst of static followed by fragmented video. A security camera somewhere beyond the chamber flickered onto the holographic display. 5 armored figures stood in the outer corridor. Seralyth leaned forward. Their armor resembled royal security equipment, but Elias noticed immediately what was missing. Every palace guard carried an active identity beacon in the left shoulder plate, a small blue quantum marker visible to maintenance sensors. These soldiers showed nothing. "Those are not your guards," he said. Seralyth studied them. "The armor is correct?"
"The transmitters aren't." One of the figures placed a cutting device against the outer barrier. A thin line of violet energy spread across the door. Elias enlarged the image. "And that tool is illegal on 3 human colonies." Seralyth looked at him. "How do you know?" "Engineering conferences are educational."
"Elias."
"Fine. Young adulthood." Despite herself, Seralyth almost smiled. Then the camera feed distorted. A 6th figure entered the corridor carrying a compact device and attached it to the wall. Elias watched a waveform spike across his console. "Signal jammer." Static swallowed the image. The old optical channel died. A second later, every light in the chamber went black. Emergency illumination returned in dim red strips along the floor. Seralyth's breathing quickened. Elias heard the change immediately. He crossed to the cooling system and checked its pump. Still running. "Look at me," he said. Her eyes found his. "The air is stable for now. Cooling is still active."
"For now."
"I specialize in for now. It's practically the engineering profession." She steadied herself. Elias opened the ancient chamber schematics, searching beneath layers of corrupted data. Something unexpected appeared below the floor. A maintenance conduit not connected to any modern palace map. He enlarged it. The passage extended from beneath the medical platform into structures far older than the chamber itself. "Your Majesty."
"What?"
He rotated the hologram toward her. "I found a door they probably don't know about." Seralyth studied the forgotten passage.
"Where does it lead?"
"No idea." Another heavy impact echoed from the entrance. Elias smiled without humor. "Which currently makes it the safest place in the palace." The maintenance conduit beneath the medical platform was not designed for queens. Elias decided that within the first 30 seconds. It was barely high enough for him to crouch, lined with ribbed alloy, ancient fiber channels, and pipes that pulsed with faint blue light, as if the palace possessed veins. Behind them, muffled through several layers of floor plating, came another violent impact against the chamber door. Seralyth paused at the entrance to the passage and stared into the darkness.
"This is your escape route?"
Elias switched on his shoulder lamp. "Technically, it is a hole in the floor."
"Comforting."
"I try." She gathered the loose edge of her medical robe and climbed down after him. The temperature inside the conduit was cooler, which helped, but Elias could tell the queen was still fighting the effects of her cycle. Her breathing remained controlled only through effort, and every distant vibration made her long ears twitch sharply. He slowed his pace without mentioning why. Seralyth noticed anyway.
"Do not treat me as fragile."
"I'm treating the tunnel as badly designed."
"You slowed down."
"The tunnel slowed down first." She gave him a look that would have intimidated ministers. Elias pretended to inspect a pipe. They moved deeper beneath the palace, while the modern world above them disappeared. The smooth maintenance metal gradually gave way to something older, black stone-like alloy, carved with narrow, luminous symbols. Elias ran his scanner across one wall. "This section is at least 900 years old." "Older," Seralyth said. The first palace was built over ruins left by the Vaelor. The extinct civilization? Supposedly extinct. Elias looked around. That word does a lot of work in archaeology. A sharp metallic noise echoed behind them. The assassins had breached the upper chamber. Seralyth turned instantly. They are inside. Elias checked the obsolete map projected from his wrist console. Then we keep moving. They will find the passage. Eventually. You seem very fond of that word. It has kept me alive through 3 reactor failures and 1 diplomatic banquet. What happened at the banquet? The reactor failures were less dangerous. Seralyth nearly laughed, but the sound caught when another wave of discomfort passed through her. She leaned briefly against the wall. Elias looked away, giving her the dignity of pretending he had not noticed. After a moment, she pushed forward. The conduit opened into a forgotten service chamber filled with dead machinery. At its center stood a ring of crystalline nodes surrounding a console buried beneath centuries of dust. Elias brushed the surface clean. To his surprise, the console activated beneath his touch. Thin lines of light flowed outward, illuminating the chamber. That is either excellent news, he said, or the beginning of an ancient curse. Humans believe in curses. Engineers do when equipment starts working without permission. The device displayed a communications lattice unlike any current Varian system. Seralyth recognized the symbols. Quantum relay architecture. Royal Intelligence stopped using this network generations ago. Elias connected his console carefully. The old system resisted, then opened. Hundreds of encrypted data packets flooded the display. Not random traffic. Recent transmissions. Very recent. Someone revived this network, Elias said. Seralyth stepped beside him. Can you read it? Not directly. He isolated several packets, compared timing signatures, then smiled faintly. But whoever encrypted these was arrogant. How can you tell? They reused a synchronization pattern. That is arrogant? To an engineer, yes. We have low standards for villainy. He forced one channel open. A holographic text stream appeared. Security rotations, medical schedules, summit access codes, orders to disable atmospheric control in the Queen's chamber. Seralyth went utterly still. Elias continued scrolling until a command authorization appeared at the bottom of one transmission. General Kaelor. The name hung in blue light between them. Seralyth's face changed. For the first time since Elias had met her, the Queen looked genuinely wounded. No. Elias glanced at her. You know him well? He commanded my father's guard. He carried me from the palace during the Orun uprising. He has served my family for 32 years. Another transmission opened automatically. It instructed the assassins to confirm Seralyth's death before the summit began. The same authorization code appeared again. Kaelor. Elias stared at the data, then frowned. Something bothered him. Before he could examine it, a distant mechanical scraping came from the tunnel behind them. Seralyth heard it too. They found the passage. Elias shut down the relay display and scanned the chamber. 2 exits. One led toward the old palace foundations. The other descended farther underground. Which direction? Seralyth asked. Elias checked the map. The lower route connects to something labeled only as Strategic Communications Vault. And the other? Old drainage. We take the vault. I was hoping you'd say drainage. Much less political betrayal. They descended a narrow stairwell as white search beams appeared in the tunnel behind them. A pulse weapon fired. Energy struck the wall near Elias, showering sparks across the floor. Seralyth grabbed his arm and pulled him around the corner. Your assassins are becoming impatient, he said. They are not my assassins. Fair distinction. The lower vault opened suddenly before them, enormous and dark, filled with suspended crystalline processors. Elias activated the nearest terminal. The system awakened with a deep harmonic tone. More intercepted transmissions appeared, including plans for troop movements inside the palace during tomorrow's summit. Seralyth read them quickly.
This is not merely an assassination.
No. Elias brought up a tactical map. Red markers spread across the royal complex. Armories, communication centers, defense platforms. It's a coup. Seralyth's eyes hardened.
Kaelor would never do this.
Elias enlarged the authorization signature. Tiny timing irregularities appeared between quantum pulses. He stared at them, then smiled grimly. Good.
Good?
Your general may still be annoying, authoritarian, and terrible at parties.
He is.
But I don't think he's a traitor. Seralyth stepped closer.
Why?
Elias pointed to the microscopic differences in the signature. Because this code is perfect in every way, except one. Another pulse weapon blast struck the outer doorway. Elias locked the vault entrance. It's a copy. Seralyth stared at the enlarged quantum signature, while another impact struck the sealed vault door behind them. The crystalline processors suspended overhead trembled, sending pale ripples of light across the chamber. Elias expanded the authorization code until the command structure filled the air between them. Every royal command carries microscopic timing noise, he said. Quantum processors generate it naturally. You can copy the code, the encryption key, even the identity certificate. But unless you duplicate the exact physical device that created the transmission, the timing pattern won't match. Seralyth's gaze sharpened.
So someone stole Kaelor's authorization?
More accurately, someone recorded it and built a very expensive imitation.
Can you determine who?
Elias looked toward the door as another pulse blast struck it. Preferably before our enthusiastic visitors turn us into decorative smoke. He searched the intercepted network, following the false signature backward through layers of hidden relays. Whoever had designed the conspiracy understood palace security extremely well. Each transmission bounced through abandoned systems, maintenance satellites, ceremonial communication nodes, and even an automated irrigation network beneath the royal gardens. Elias blinked at that last connection. Your roses are involved in treason. They have always been suspicious. Finally, something we agree on. A trace of amusement touched Seralyth's face, but it disappeared when her medical bracelet flashed amber. Her temperature was climbing again. The cool air of the ancient foundations had helped, yet without Vaelor, the hormonal cycle continued driving her metabolism toward dangerous levels. Elias noticed her fingers trembling slightly. You need to sit. I need to find the person trying to take my throne. You can do both. Humanity invented chairs several thousand years ago for exactly this reason. For political coups? Mostly meetings, which are slower coups. Seralyth gave him a warning look, but lowered herself onto the edge of an ancient console. Elias returned to the trace. One relay after another vanished until only a single destination remained. The western political wing of the palace. Restricted apartments, private council chambers, Lord Vaelor's residence. Elias said nothing at first. Seralyth saw the answer in his face. Show me. He projected the routing map. The final node pulsed above Vaelor's wing. Seralyth's long ears slowly angled backward. My cousin. The evidence points there. Vaelor has spent 20 years complaining that he wants less responsibility. That may have been true. Elias opened another packet. Apparently, he has recently developed ambition. The hidden archive contained far more than assassination orders. Surveillance recordings appeared, private council meetings, military briefings, diplomatic conversations, even fragments of Seralyth speaking with her physician. Someone had secretly monitored the royal family for years. Elias felt his stomach tighten as he understood the scale of preparation. Vaelor had not improvised this plot. He had built it patiently, one stolen password and compromised system at a time. Seralyth rose despite her weakness. We confront him now. Elias turned. No. The Queen's eyes narrowed. You just told your monarch no. I'm having a reckless evening. He is attempting to murder me. Exactly why marching into his apartments while feverish, isolated from your guards and carrying no evidence outside this vault, would be an excellent way to help him. Seralyth stepped closer. Even exhausted, she possessed the presence that had silenced entire diplomatic chambers. You forget who I am. No, I'm counting on who you are. That stopped her. Elias pointed toward the intercepted files.
A queen doesn't need revenge tonight. She needs proof tomorrow. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Seralyth exhaled. You are becoming intolerably sensible. It's temporary. The vault door buckled inward by several centimeters. Elias checked the structural integrity. And temporary is becoming fashionable. He searched the room for anything useful. Most of the ancient processors were disconnected from the modern palace, but one maintenance subsystem still possessed access to service drones, environmental controls, and architectural machinery. Elias grinned. Seralyth recognized the expression immediately. Why are you smiling? Because royal assassins prepare for guards, weapons, and security barriers. He activated the neglected service network. Hundreds of tiny icons appeared across the holographic palace map. Cleaning drones, repair crawlers, cargo lifts, automated kitchen carts. Nobody prepares for maintenance. Seralyth stared at the display. You intend to fight a coup with cleaning machines? Please show some respect. One of these has industrial polishing equipment. He sent commands through the old network. Across the palace, dormant service units awakened. Cargo elevators locked themselves between floors. Maintenance panels sealed strategic corridors. Cleaning drones began flooding several passages with slippery decontamination foam. Seralyth watched the tactical map as hostile patrol routes suddenly changed. That is absurd. Absurd is underrated. Elias then isolated a secure military frequency beneath the conspirators' network. One transmitter remained active near the Eastern Defense Tower. Its identification code belonged to General Kaelor himself. If he's alive, we can reach him. Seralyth leaned toward the console. Open the channel. Static answered first, then weapons fire. A voice broke through. Identify yourself. Seralyth straightened. Kaelor. Silence. Your Majesty. The general sounded genuinely stunned. Seralyth closed her eyes for half a second. Relief quickly buried. I am alive. The palace network reported your medical chamber compromised. Vaelor announced your death 12 minutes ago. Elias and Seralyth exchanged a look. The coup had begun earlier than expected. Kaelor continued. Half the Western Guard has turned. Defense systems are rejecting my command codes. Because your codes were stolen, Elias said. Who is that? The engineer currently keeping your queen alive. Elias Vance? Elias blinked. I'm touched you know me. I rejected 3 of your maintenance proposals. Ah, then our relationship is already complicated. Seralyth almost smiled. Kaelor did not. Vaelor has seized the central command hall. If he controls the summit network, he can declare emergency succession before the planetary council arrives. Elias searched the palace map and found another troubling signal beneath the throne complex. Nanites were spreading toward the main defense core. Then we have one advantage. Seralyth looked at him. Which is? Elias brought the service network fully online. Hundreds of maintenance machines lit up across the hologram. He thinks the palace belongs to him. The vault door cracked. Armed figures appeared beyond the widening gap. Elias activated every service drone between them and the throne level. Let's introduce him to the staff. The first assassin through the cracked vault door never expected to be attacked by a cleaning drone. That, Elias decided, was the great advantage of maintenance equipment. Nobody respected it until it was moving at 40 kilometers per hour. The small machine shot across the floor, sprayed a burst of decontamination foam under the intruder's boots, and sent him crashing into the doorway hard enough to knock the second soldier backward. Seralyth stared.
You weaponized a sanitation unit. I prefer expanded its responsibilities. Remind me never to anger the housekeeping staff. Wise policy. Elias triggered 2 repair crawlers suspended in the ceiling. They dropped on magnetic cables, clamped onto the assassin's pulse rifles, and yanked the weapons upward. Seralyth moved despite her exhaustion with startling speed, striking one intruder across the wrist and driving him into the wall. Her biological condition had weakened her stamina, but not her instincts. Elias shut the vault door again and welded the damaged seam remotely. That bought us maybe 5 minutes. You said that 10 minutes ago. I'm improving. They left through a secondary passage connected to the old palace transit system. Elias used the service network to guide them while General Kaelor's voice crackled through the encrypted channel. Loyal guards had secured part of the eastern wing, but Vaelor now controlled the central command hall, the royal broadcast network, and most automated defenses. Worse, official palace displays were already announcing that Queen Seralyth had died from complications during her private medical isolation. Seralyth stopped walking when the words appeared on an abandoned corridor screen. A formal portrait of her floated above a mourning emblem. They chose that photograph? She asked. Elias glanced at it. You look very regal. I look exhausted. Political propaganda values symbolism over flattering lighting. She turned toward him slowly. Elias. Right. Treason first, photography later. They emerged into a service junction beneath the Western Palace. Above them came the muffled thunder of weapons fire. Elias opened a maintenance hatch and peered through. Several floors higher, Vaelor's soldiers were moving toward the central security spine. Instead of engaging them, Elias accessed the local gravity controls. What are you doing? Seralyth asked. Making architecture participate. He reversed the gravitic field in one corridor. On his schematic, 6 hostile soldiers abruptly lifted from the floor and struck the ceiling. Their weapons floated beside them. Seralyth watched the display. Is that safe? For us? For them? Elias considered it. Define safe. She almost laughed, but her medical bracelet flashed red. The moment passed. Seralyth leaned against the wall. Her pulse had climbed dangerously high. Elias immediately redirected coolant from a nearby environmental loop into the junction, lowering the temperature around her. You cannot continue like this. I have a kingdom currently announcing my death. Yes, and it will remain inconvenient if you make the announcement accurate. She closed her eyes, breathed slowly, then nodded. Proceed. They moved again, slower now. Kaelor guided them toward an old access shaft beneath the command hall, but before they reached it, Vaelor's voice filled every palace speaker. Citizens of Varian, the Queen is dead. For the preservation of order, I have assumed temporary regency. Seralyth's face hardened. Elias accessed the ancient communications relay from his wrist console. He likes speeches. He always has. Good. People who enjoy speeches usually forget technicians are listening. Elias began feeding the intercepted conspiracy files into the palace broadcast backbone. The modern system rejected his access 3 times. On the 4th attempt, he routed through the obsolete Avalari network beneath the palace. Ancient crystalline processors awakened one by one, linking to modern holographic projectors in thousands of rooms. Can you override him? Seralyth asked. Not politely. I withdraw any requirement for politeness. Elias smiled. Royal authorization received. Vaelor's broadcast vanished mid-sentence. Every screen in the palace flickered. Then the hidden recordings appeared. Orders to sabotage Seralyth's chamber, stolen security codes, surveillance files, payment records, tactical maps. Vaelor's own voice echoed through the halls as he instructed assassins to wait until the Queen's biological cycle reached its weakest phase before entering. Silence followed. Then Kaelor's voice came through the channel. You just transmitted that to the entire palace. And the diplomatic ships in orbit, Elias said. Possibly also the kitchen. Definitely the kitchen, Seralyth added. Loyal guard signals began multiplying across the tactical map. Vaelor's troops stopped advancing. Several units surrendered almost immediately. Others switched sides when they realized the evidence was public. The coup began collapsing faster than it had formed. Seralyth stepped toward a wall terminal and activated a live royal channel. Her face appeared across Varian. Pale, tired, visibly unwell, but alive. "This is Queen Seralyth," she said, her voice steady. "Reports of my death have been exaggerated." Elias whispered, "Human literature approves." She ignored him with practiced dignity. "General Kaelor retains lawful command. Any soldier serving Vaelor is ordered to stand down." The transmission ended. For 3 seconds, Elias allowed himself to believe they had won. Then every light in the passage turned black. A deep alarm rose from beneath the palace. Not security. Reactor containment. Elias looked at his console, and the humor disappeared from his face. A new energy source had activated below the throne complex. Extremely dense. Artificially contained. Seralyth saw his expression. "What?" He magnified the reading. Antimatter. Enough to tear open half the palace if the containment field failed. Vaelor's voice returned, but this time only on the emergency channel. He was no longer calm. "If I am denied the throne," he said, "there will be no throne left to inherit." The countdown appeared across Elias's display. 4 minutes, 38 seconds. Seralyth stared at it. "Can you stop it?" Elias already had his tools in his hands. "Probably." "Probably?" It is one of engineering's most optimistic words. They ran toward the reactor access lift as the palace shook around them. Above, loyal forces closed in on Vaelor. Below, the antimatter containment field began to fail. The reactor access lift dropped so fast that Elias felt his stomach rise toward his throat. Seralyth stood beside him with one hand gripping the rail, her face pale under the emergency lights, but her eyes fixed on the countdown floating above Elias's wrist console. 3 minutes, 52 seconds. "Tell me you have a plan," she said. "I have several ideas." "That is not the same thing." "It is how plans begin." The lift doors opened into heat. Beneath the throne complex, the royal reactor chamber stretched downward like the core of a mechanical planet. Rings of magnetic containment rotated around a sphere of white energy, while hundreds of conduits fed power into the palace above. At the center of the maintenance platform sat Vaelor's device, a black antimatter capsule connected directly to the containment grid. Elias ran toward it and immediately stopped. Nanites swarmed over the control housing in a shifting metallic layer. "Of course," he muttered. "The tiny murder insects are back." Seralyth activated the communicator. Kaelor's voice answered through bursts of weapons fire. "We have Vaelor trapped near the lower throne machinery. He refuses surrender." "Keep him alive," Seralyth ordered. "He will answer publicly for this." Then she looked at Elias. "And you?" He was already scanning the nanite network. "I'm going to argue with physics." The sabotage had connected the antimatter device to the same hidden system that had poisoned the medical chamber, forged Kaelor's codes, and manipulated palace diagnostics. Destroying the capsule directly would rupture containment. Disconnecting it would trigger the detonator. Elias stared at the architecture until an impossible connection formed in his mind. The medical chamber. Its biological processors had been designed to detect microscopic chemical changes in Seralyth's body faster than normal palace computers could respond. Those same processors might be able to identify the nanites individually and overwhelm their command structure. "I need access to your medical chamber," he said. Seralyth blinked. "We are several hundred meters below it. The old Avalari network connects both systems. You discovered that an hour ago." "I was distracted by assassins." He linked his console to the ancient crystalline relay and forced a pathway upward through forgotten circuits. The chamber answered. Its damaged processors came online one by one. Elias fed them the nanite signature he had captured earlier. "Come on," he whispered. "You tried to kill us once tonight. Redeem yourself."
The processors responded with a harmonic pulse. Across the reactor housing, the nanites suddenly froze. Then they began falling away like silver dust. The countdown stopped at 1 minute, 9 seconds. Seralyth exhaled. "You did it." Elias stared at the display. "Not yet." The antimatter capsule remained armed. The nanites were dead, but the device had switched to an independent trigger. He opened the housing manually. 3 quantum couplers pulsed around the core. One wrong move would erase the distinction between palace and crater. Seralyth came closer. "Can I help?" Earlier that night, Elias would have told her to stand back. Now he understood something he had not before. Protecting someone did not always mean excluding them from danger. Sometimes it meant trusting them inside it. He handed her a field stabilizer. "Hold this exactly where I tell you." She accepted it without hesitation. Together they worked while Kaelor's battle echoed through the communicator. Elias disconnected the first coupler. Seralyth stabilized the magnetic field. The second released with a sharp crack. At 12 seconds, Elias reached the final connection. "If this goes badly," he said, "I want it recorded that I oppose the palace's maintenance budget." "If this goes badly," Seralyth replied, "there will be no one left to record it." "That seems administratively inconvenient." He pulled the coupler. The countdown vanished. The white reactor sphere steadied. For several seconds, neither moved. Then Seralyth began laughing. It was not royal laughter or diplomatic laughter, but exhausted, helpless laughter. Elias joined her until the communicator interrupted them. "Your Majesty," Kaelor said, "Vaelor is in custody." Seralyth's expression settled. "Alive?" "Angry, wounded, and very much alive." "Good." Weeks later, the palace looked almost normal again. Vaelor's conspiracy had been exposed before the Planetary Council and the Allied delegations. Every official who had helped him was identified through the surveillance archives. Kaelor was publicly cleared of treason and reinstated with greater authority, though Elias privately maintained that having rejected 3 maintenance proposals should remain on his permanent record. The sabotaged medical systems were rebuilt from the foundation upward. Seralyth recovered under proper supervision, and palace law was rewritten so that no single group could ever again control royal medical access, security authorization, and emergency succession simultaneously. Elias expected his own part in the matter to end quietly. Instead, one morning he was summoned to the throne hall. Seralyth sat beneath the silver crown of Vaelor, fully recovered, her long ears visible through her pale hair and amusement already waiting in her eyes. "Elias Vance," she said, "you entered a forbidden chamber, dismantled royal equipment, commandeered service drones, inverted gravity in 3 corridors, insulted my security architecture, and rewired an ancient civilization beneath my palace." Elias considered that. "When you list it like that, it sounds unprofessional." Kaelor coughed suspiciously nearby. Seralyth continued, "You also saved my life, exposed a coup, restored my commander's honor, and prevented the destruction of this palace. Effective immediately, you are appointed Royal Systems Architect." Elias stared at her. "Does the position include authority over restricted doors?" "Unfortunately." "Then I have one condition." "You are negotiating with your queen?" "I've changed." Seralyth smiled. "Clearly." Elias pointed toward the eastern underground wing. "That secret chamber door is getting replaced." "No." "Your Majesty?" "It remains." "Why?" Seralyth leaned back slightly. "Because every palace should preserve at least one monument to fortunate accidents." Elias shook his head, but he was smiling. Months earlier, he had thought his work was about keeping machines alive while royalty made decisions above him. Now he understood that systems were not only circuits, reactors, and doors. They were trust, responsibility, and the people hidden behind titles. Seralyth had learned something similar. She no longer treated vulnerability as something to conceal at any cost, and he no longer mistook distance for professionalism. As Elias left the throne hall, the palace AI informed him that the eastern chamber door had developed a minor fault. He stopped walking. Behind him, Seralyth laughed. Elias looked toward the ceiling. Of course it has.